talk about logistics for apparel exports. This is one of the important aspect of export and import, and this is the last but not the least function that has to be undertaken by the exporter. And what we are going to discuss about will be mostly focused on the activities related to apparel exporter. So logistics for apparel exports, we go to slide number 2. The first thing that we will talk about is the IEC number. IEC number is one of those important aspects. IEC is the importer-exporter code, and whenever you want to export, the first thing that you require is the import-export code number. And this to import or export in India, IEC code is mandatory. No person as an individual or an entity, which is a firm, export house or export firm, you will not be allowed to make any export or import without IEC code number. Now, IEC code number is a unique 10-digit code issued by DGFT, Director General Foreign Trade, which comes under Ministry of Commerce, Government of India, which grants this IEC to the Indian companies. And the good news or the best part today is that the application can be found online in the DGFT website. And I have provided the link in the last line, which is Ayat Niryat form. Ayat means import and Niryat means export. So Ayat Niryat form ANF2A. You just click on this, it will take you to the website, and there's a form over there which you can fill. All the details are related to you. You have to have a name, either your own name or a company name, the company which has to be registered. And then you have to have your PAN number, you have to have your account number. Once you are done with that, then you take this import-export code number. Once you have this, you are good to go, and you can start exporting. Now, other than the IEC number, there is something called an export license. Now, if you see this, there are various categories of items. Now, the best part is that most of the goods, most of the items, most of the products or merchandise, these are all free for exports, and you don't even have to obtain any license for that. So export licenses are only required for items which are listed in the Schedule 2 of the ITC-HS classification of export and import items. Now, this ITC-HS is harmonized system, and ITC is Indian trade classification. So ITC-HS, this Schedule 2, you can download and see what are the products for which licenses are required. In that list, if you are not able to find your product, you are free to assume that for that product you don't have to take any licenses. If license is required, that product will be there in the list. The Export Licensing Committee, under the chairmanship of Export Commissioner DGFT, considers such applications on merits for issue of export licenses. They would be looking at your previous performances and your credibility in the market and other things, based on which they will be giving you the export license if required. And the export license is required. The application has to be submitted by the exporter, the interested exporter, and the Export Licensing Committee under the chairmanship of Export Commissioner DGFT will consider such application. Now, I want you to remember the last line: items which fall in negative list requires license. Negative list includes prohibited items, restricted items, and canalized items. Now, prohibited items are those items which cannot be exported. Now, these can be things like uranium, or can be sensitive instruments, or it can be those old statues of gods, especially in case of India. Now, these fall under prohibited items. Restricted items are those items in which you will be allowed, but then you'll have to take special permission. So it can be something like onions, or it can be like hydroquinone, which USA has asked from India. So someone who is making hydroquinone today in India, and suppose this medicine is also required in India, then the government will not allow this exporter to freely export hydroquinone. This exporter will have to take special permission for exporting, and that permission will also be in terms of the quantity, just in case India feels that there could be a shortage. So therefore, only certain amounts should be allowed to be exported from India to US, especially in this difficult times. So that is the category of restricted items. The third one is canalized items. Canalized items are related to such products which are only to be exported through state trading corporations, STCs. A state trading corporation, one of the example is MMTC, which is Mineral and Metal Trading Corporation. So if you have to export iron or aluminum and things like that, a normal exporter is not allowed to export. So only the Mineral and Metal Trading Corporation or other such corporations are allowed. And you as an individual, you cannot freely export it. If the government allows you to export, only then you will be able to export. So that is the third category, canalized items. These prohibited, free, prohibited, restricted, and all these four categories will be discussed in detail in the next session, which is related to foreign trade policy. We go to the next slide, which is you can see the picture of the container, the vessel. Vessel is the water vehicle that we use for transportation of the shipment, and container is the box. These containers are normally in the size of 20 feet, 40 feet, 80 feet. And the height and the width of the container standard throughout the world is 8 feet. Height is 8 feet, width is 8 feet, and the length can change. It can be at 20 foot, 40 foot, or 80 foot. And you can see in the picture, this is a huge vessel carrying somewhere around 300 to 400 containers, which is a huge mass of merchandise. And there are these symbols which have been given to the container depot for packing, unpacking, warehouse, and then there's container terminal, container vessel. Container vessel, the symbol that you see, that is also evident in the picture that you have, that vessel in the sea. Container terminal is the place where the container is either picked up or it is taken down from the vessel and put on the dock. The second one that you see is pack or unpack point. There's a warehouse. Warehouse is the individual's warehouse or the forwarder agent's warehouse from where the goods will be loaded onto the truck. From the truck, it will be taken to the dock. From the dock, it will be at the container terminal, the shipment or the container will be put onto the vessel. And then there is a container depot. Container depot is the place where all the containers are stored. Such containers which have to leave the country or such containers which have come to the country. These will be stored at the container depot, and then it will be distributed to its further destination. And then we have, if you see this, the next slide, slide number 5, we have the vessel. Now you have two vessels. One is the feeder vessel, the other is the mother vessel. A mother vessel is huge, very, very big. Feeder vessels are small. Now the importance of feeder vessel, especially in case of India, is that India does not happen to have very big ports. So because we don't have very big ports, so the mother vessel, they cannot reach the port. They have to be in the sea only, somewhere around 5 to 10 kilometers away from the port. Because the mother vessel is so big, the bottom is very high. The bottom is, very deep into the sea. So if the mother vessel tries to reach our port, the bottom of the vessel is going to hit the ground before it reaches the port. So in case of India especially, we use these feeder vessels. These feeder vessels, they will leave from India's port, go into the sea, and there the cranes are going to transfer the container from the feeder vessel to the mother vessel. And similarly, when you are delivering the shipment, suppose you have reached a port which is very small, then again the mother vessel will not touch the port. It will be, within the sea itself, and from there, feeder vessels, empty feeder vessels will come, and the relevant containers will be shifted from the mother vessel to the feeder vessel, and then the feeder vessel will go to the country and deliver it at the customs. Then we come to slide number 6. We are going to talk about two important concepts. One is ETD and the other is ETA. ETD is estimated time of, ETA is estimated time of arrival. Now ETA and ETD is something that you will see in your airline tickets also. And you also see all those screens at the app. There you will see the ETD and ETA. So that ETA is the expected estimated time of arrival. Is the time when a ship or a vehicle, aircraft, cargo, or emergency service or person is expected to arrive at a certain place. The estimated time of departure is the expected time where the shipment or the vehicle is going to leave for the destination. So ETD, ETA is one very common thing that you will see, and especially in all the export documents, ETD, ETA will be given. And then another set of term, consignor and consignee. Consignor is the person who is the seller or who is the manufacturer. So suppose I am manufacturing something and I'm supposed to send something to, let's say, Zara. Then when I'm sending it, I am the consignor, and I'll be sending it in the name of the person who has given the order. So in my case, the consignee is going to be Zara. It could be Zara or it could be the name of the bank of Zara, in which the documents will be drawn. So the name of the person or the institution which is given in the shipping documents, that person is going to be the owner of the shipment. So that's consignor and consignee. Then we have shipping line and container line. Shipping line or container line are used interchangeably. Shipping line, container line is a company that operates the ships that actually carry the containers. And the containers can be owned or leased, and cargo from loading port to discharge port. And the world's top 5 container lines are Maersk. Maersk Sea Line is the biggest operator in the world, and then Mediterranean Shipping Company, and then CMA CGM, and then Evergreen Line. COSCO is Chinese largest container line. So there is a person who owns the ship, and there is a person who owns the containers. So there are two different people. One person is owning the ship, the other person is owning the container. And there can be times when one single person owns the ship as well as the container. But normally someone who's, no one can own infinite number of containers. So there are some people who've invested in containers and the others have invested in ships. So container owner is someone who owns the container that they provide to the various customers. And this container can go from one country to another country and it can go around the world all the time. So all containers will bear a marking which will reveal who is the owner of the container. So you have a beautiful picture of container lines from various countries, including China and Europe and Japan and various other countries of Europe. These are the various container lines, and these different container lines have different functions also. Some of them specialize in only carrying oil. Some of them would carry only aquatic products like seafood, and some of them could be carrying general merchandise. So depending on the different functions, the container line is designed accordingly. And then we come to container detail. Now this one is very interesting. Normally people don't know about it, but this is something fairly simple, and then one good read and you would remember this. Container details, like I said, if you see the first picture, which is on slide 11, this container, the width and the height of the container, like I said, is 8 feet. But if you see, the internal dimension says the width is 7 feet 8 inches and the height is 7 feet 10 inches. So the the external dimension is 8 feet by 8 feet. So the internal dimension is slightly less. And when I have to send goods, I'm least bothered about the external dimensions. I'm bothered about the internal dimension because my goods are going to occupy the internal space.
not as per the external space. And of course, door opening is very important, the width and the height, because suppose I was making such products which are large in dimension. So based on the dimension of the door opening, I would know whether my product will be able to enter the container or not. And then the third one is weight. Weight is the capacity of the container. First is maximum payload is 21.8 tons, 21,800 kgs. So the payload is the weight of shipment that you can put, or the weight of the merchandise that you can put inside this 20-foot standard container, dry van. And the title says standard container details 20-foot general purpose dry van. General purposes, you can generally put any kind of merchandise inside it. The length of the container is 20 foot. And we say dry van because it is closed from all the sides and it is opening, it has a door only at one side. So once this door is locked, and if this is put on any vessel, and while the vessel is, moving from point A to point B, if it rains, the water cannot go inside this container. Therefore, we call it dry van. Okay. Now we come to the weight, the kilograms and pounds. The maximum that you can put inside this container is 21,800 kilograms. Now the container tear means the weight. The weight of the container is 2,200 kgs. And the total weight of this container after putting your merchandise should not be more than 24,000 kgs. So that's that. And the cubic meter, when you see the volume capacity. So one is the weight capacity. The maximum weight that you can put inside this container is 21,800 kilograms. Now, if there is something which is very light, not so heavy, but then occupies a lot of space. So in that case, the volume capacity is that the maximum volume that can be put inside is 33.2 cubic meters, not more than that. So let's say you are supplying cotton, or you are supplying sugar, or you are supplying anything which is continuous in nature, which does not have a fix. And suppose you were supplying sand, you can fill it, but then how much volume capacity can you fill? So that is 33.2 cubic meter. So this one was one detail about 20-footer. Second one, you can read this entire detail and you can understand as I have explained to you. Now this one is 40 foot general purpose dry van. This one is closed from all the sides, only open at one side. You can see the door. And this is suitable for commodities in boxes, cartons, bundles, drums, smaller cases, furniture, pallets, etc. These can be stored inside very safely and can be transported from one point to another. Then we have the next one, which is open top container details. Now this one is 20 foot in length. The rest of the details can be seen, but this one is an open top. Now the blue shaded roof that you see can be opened. Now such containers are used when you are going to load the container with, let's say with the help of a crane, you are simply going to pour in the sand or the coal or stones, etc. And you can simply fill it from the top. And once it is filled, then the roof can be closed. And it also has a door at one side. So while you are filling it with the help of cranes, you can fill it from the top. And when you want to take it out, you can take it out from the top, or you can open the gate and then take it out. So if humans are going to, after this container has reached the destination, if the labor is supposed to, take out the things from the goods from this container, then they can simply open the door, and with the help of various implements, they can dig or take out goods from this container. Next one is again same as the previous one, but in this case it is a 40-footer open top. Again, opens from the top, and it also has a gate at one end. And this one is for large and or high pieces that cannot be loaded through container doors. Now, if there is, let's say, something which has a height of more than 10 feet, 15 feet, it will not go inside any container. So in case of open containers, open top, the roof can be opened, and you can load the tall products which have great height onto this container. and machinery, marble, glass sheets. Some things which are very sturdy can be sent openly, and even if it rains or there is a lot of sun or something like that, nothing would happen. So machinery is well packed for marble stones. It doesn't matter marble stones whether it rains or hails or there is sun, does not matter. Same for the glass sheet also. So in these cases, we can use the open top containers. So container details, internal dimensions and weights are based on shipping lines and manufacturer specification. So for example, if you are buying any furniture from, let's say, Pepperfry or from any other online retailer, you should always see the dimension of the furniture. Then you should measure the dimension of your door, the external door, your inside door, in whichever room you want to keep the furniture, and you should also measure the dimension of the opening of the lift. If the lift opening is small, then you will not be able to use the lift for taking the goods from ground floor to whatever floor you want to shift. That's why it's important to measure the internal dimension before you buy any large product for your home. And that is why they also give you the dimensions, the ones who sell furniture or big appliances. Tolerances must always be taken into account by shipper. Tolerances mean if the internal dimension is 7.5 foot, then your product should be somewhere around 7 foot or so. Because while you're trying to insert or put the product inside, it may rub against both the walls of the container and get scratched. So your product should be a little significantly less than the dimension of the container. So the tolerances should always be taken into account by the shipper, and weight restrictions may be considered throughout the whole transport leg. So if the weight restriction is 21,800 kgs for a 20-footer container, you have to keep that in mind and you have to follow it. Otherwise, there can be problems at the customs or anywhere in between. We are going to slide number 16. The national rules and regulations for road and rail transport, capacity limitations of cranes in seaport and inland terminals, as well as other factors, may overrule the possible payload of a container. This means just because the container can carry 21,800 kilos, you still have to also check in a country that in their country, how much total load do they allow. So let's say you are sending a shipment to Nairobi, an African country, and it is not such a prosperous country. And they don't have such kind of cranes which can lift 21,800 kgs. And they may have a restriction that we will only allow such containers whose maximum weight is not more than 20,000 kgs or maybe 15,000 kgs. So when you are sending shipments from India to, let's say, Nairobi, you should check the limitation in India customs, and you should also check the limitation in Nairobi customs, and then send. There's no point in getting stuck after you've sent the shipment. So for precise case-by-case information, your freight forwarder, the clearing and forwarding agent, or the packing specialist, or the specific shipping line, you can consult them, and they'll be able to tell you that, sir, in your country this is allowed, but when you're sending something to this country, they will raise an objection. So don't stuff the container beyond 15,000 or 17,000 kgs. Okay, and then of course, it's important to know about the functions of the shipping and forwarding agent, the clearing and forwarding agent. So this person through whom you are sending from Patna, you are sending a shipment to Europe. First thing, you are going to send the shipment from Patna to, let's say, Kolkata or maybe to Mumbai. You are going to send it to your forwarding agent. Now this forwarding agent is going to receive the documents and is going to receive the shipment that you sent. Then this forwarding agent is going to get the documents cleared at the customs. Then he is going to take the goods to the inspection area. He is going to get the goods inspected. Once the inspection is done, then he is going to again get the goods transported from there to the loading area. At the loading area, the forwarding agent is going to get the containers loaded onto the ship. Once it is loaded onto the ship, then all the documents which have to be stamped and all the fees that has to be paid at various stages in the customs office, all of that has to be paid by the forwarding agent. And then all the signed and stamped documents which are received back from the customs officer, that will be taken and it will be sent by the forwarder to you by way of. So basically, these are the functions of the shipping and forwarding agent. If you send the goods, let's say you send the grain, then your forwarding agent is going to get the goods released from the station and then take the goods to the warehouse. They will keep the goods at the warehouse and then they are going to take the goods from the warehouse to the docks, the customs, and there again they will be making arrangement of warehousing at the port, and they are going to book the shipping space or space in the aircraft. They are also going to, they are in a position to help you on the cost, which, you know, by what method should you send the goods, by sea or by air, by which container line or by which airline, you know, who can give you a better rate and things like that. And if you're sending something from one place to another, one place to some other place, so from India to whichever place, different destination, what will be the best prices? All of this information can be provided by this forwarding agent. And of course, they are supposed to arrange for the loading of goods on board, obtain marine insurance policies, preparation and processing of shipping documents, etc., and forwarding of banking collection papers. Now, this banking collection paper is what this person sends it to you, which you submit to your bank for processing and for getting the payment from the buyer's bank. And then there are some desirable functions expected from the shipping and forwarding agent, which is they should have storage facilities abroad also. If they have storage facility abroad, then you would like to, you know, warehouse your goods. If your buyer refuses to take delivery on any count, because if the buyer refuses, how will you, where will you keep your goods? It is there at the customs in the foreign country. The customs is going to charge you the demurrage. So if your forwarder has some space over there, immediately you can get the goods cleared and store it over there. And then in the meantime, get in touch with new buyers and new such prospective customers who can buy this shipment of yours, which has been, you know, refused by your original buyer. You also expect that this forwarding agent can trace the goods if the shipment goes astray through international connections. Somewhere in between, the goods have disappeared. Pirates robbed it. The ship overturned. There was a volcanic eruption. Some civil unrest happened somewhere in between two countries. Between the two countries, that ship was supposed to pass. God knows where the ship disappeared. All of these things can be found out by this forwarder, because that is his job. His job is to forward the shipments and has good connection with all the shipping line, container line, all the ports, etc. We also expect that, you know, they will arrange for assessing the damage to shipment on route, just in case there is some kind of damage. Then what is the value of that damage? The forwarder should be able to help you with the assessment of the damage. This is desirable service that we expect from these forwarders. We are on slide number 20. You can see this. These are the list of service providers, the ships and containers. If you see this Maersk Sea Line, it has a blue color box with a star mark in white. Maersk, M-A-E-R-S-K, largest in the world, and these kind of containers you can see in Delhi and Mumbai and Kolkata also. Or maybe you would have seen it sometime but haven't taken notice of it. So Maersk Sea Line is there, Mediterranean is there, CMA CGM is there, COSCO, which is China Ocean Shipping Company, one of the largest. And then Hapag-Lloyd is also there. And in this, you can see this TEU. TEU is 20-foot equivalent unit. So TEU means 20-foot container. What is the volume of that? So it's like 8 feet by 8 feet into 20 feet. That is the, so that converted into cubic. So let's say one 20-footer has X volume. Then in terms of that X, the total capacity is given in this table, the total TEU and the average TEU. So these are the top 10 list of service providers, ships and containers. And then we come to list of important ports in India. You can see this. You would have heard of a lot of them. Mumbai was one of the first ones. Kolkata was the first ones. Chennai was there. Cochin was there. Visakhapatnam was there. And then Paradip was there. Later on, Haldia came into place. Mundra, Kandla, Jamnagar. Now Jamnagar happens to be the largest one in India. Then Mangalore is there. This fourth, Mangalore, Tuticorin, in Chennai, and Visakhapatnam, it's written artificial. Artificial means it is man-made. Man-made port. Port is such a place where land and water meet, and that land ends abruptly, and it falls down to several hundred feet. So the difference between a port and a beach is that beach, the slant of the land is a very gentle degree. But in case of a port, the land ends abruptly, and at 90 degrees it goes down. It goes down to hundreds of feet. Only then a ship will be able to touch the land. So there's a list of important ports, and the list of important ports in India. India has 13 major ports, seaports that handle a large volume of traffic. The ports are located in the 9 coastal Indian states: Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, and West Bengal. And 12 out of 13 ports are government owned. Ennore Port of Chennai is privately owned. And then we see again, continued, the ports owned by the Indian government are Chennai Port, Cochin Port, JNPT, which is Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust, and Kamarajar Port, Kandla Port, Kolkata. These are very important and famous ones. Kolkata and Haldia Port is there, Mormugao Port, Mumbai Port is the busiest one, other than the Kandla Port in Gujarat, the New Mangalore Port, Paradip Port, Chidambaram Port, and Visakhapatnam Port. Ennore Port is located at Coromandel coast of Tamil Nadu state, along with private Krishnapatnam Port. And then list of important ports in the world. Most important ones are Vancouver, which is in Canada. There are various ports in the east coast of USA. And then we have Rotterdam, very important one, Rotterdam and Hamburg in Europe. And then Algiers and Rhodes is important because then through the Panama Canal we cross Asia and Africa, we cross in between, and then we touch Rhodes and Algiers, and then move towards Rotterdam or Hamburg. And then, of course, Shanghai is the largest. Qingdao and Incheon is. Shanghai and Incheon have been very important. Hong Kong has been very important. And then, of course, there is Ho Chi Minh City, and then we have Manila. These are the most important ports in the world. You would have heard about it in various contexts many times. There's a list of busiest ports of the world. Again, you can, this is for your reference. And then the important point that we come to is the ICD. ICD is the Inland Container Depot. Now, if you see, there were some, all the seaports are there where you have a land which is touching the sea. For a place like Bihar or for a place like Madhya Pradesh, it does not touch the sea at all. So how can the government make life easy for them? So there comes this concept of ICD, which is Inland Container Depot. Just like you have a port, you have the dock, you have the customs in Mumbai or Kolkata, various places. Similarly, you also have Inland Container Depot in Delhi, in Tughlakabad, and various other places. Now, this ICD is the same as any other port. The only difference is all functions will be undertaken. There is no sea or ocean over there. So meaning to say that I am an exporter, I am in Delhi. I can send the shipment to Tughlakabad Inland Container Depot, ICD. And I can get my goods cleared and everything. The container will be accepted by the customs. They will do the inspection and everything. My responsibility of handing over the goods is over the moment I hand over my goods at the Tughlakabad ICD. There is one at in Noida also, ICD. So ICD is Inland Container Depot. These are dry ports equipped for handling and temporary storage of containerized cargo as well as empties. Now, a common user facility with public authority status equipped with fixed installations and offering services for handling and temporary storage of import-export laden and empty containers carried under customs control. So the customs is also there. It is a dry port. There is no ocean. All the functions are done over there. Now, once you have given the goods to this inland container depot, these containers will be inspected, they will be sealed, and then from there, these containers will be put onto those trucks. And these trucks are going to take these containers. Now, these containers can go to Kolkata, they can go to Mumbai, or whichever place it has to go to. So that's the job of ICD, Inland Container Depot. And goods can be cleared for home use. So ICD is also for the importers. If you want to import, I'm Delhi-based importer. I can import, and I will say that I am going to take my delivery at Tughlakabad Inland Container Depot. I don't want to take the delivery in Mumbai. Because to take the delivery in Mumbai, I'll have to go to Mumbai, or I'll have to have another office in Mumbai. Why should I have that? So for a Delhi-based importer, the Delhi-based importer has the comfort of accepting the goods and getting the goods custom cleared in Delhi itself. So ICD takes care of both export as well as import. And primary purpose of ICD is to allow the benefits of containerization during the inland transport leg of international cargo movements. And if you see, this is the beautiful picture. Now, this is the warehouse of a forwarding agent. Anyone who does forwarding, clearing and forwarding agent has to have a lot of space. Normally, big warehousing agents, big forwarding agents, they have huge warehouses where they will keep the goods of people like Samsung and all these companies which send tens of containers every day, this much of goods every day. So this is the typical photograph of a warehouse of a forwarding agent. Highly mechanized with the help of robots and with the help of small mini tow trucks and cranes, etc. This entire operation is handled. It's just like any Amazon warehouse. Warehouse of a forwarding agent, freight forwarder or forwarding agent organizes import and or export shipments and works within the shipping and logistics sectors. Now, these shipments may be for individuals or for other companies such as manufacturers or retailers. A freight forwarder will usually act as an agent rather than an active carrier. What we are saying is the forwarder is only an agent. A forwarder does not own any ship. They will only take the goods from you and they will pass it on to the customs. Or they will get the goods cleared from the customs and they will pass it on to you in case you are an importer. So they are only an agent. They are not active carriers. So in this way, a forwarding agent is a third party, non-asset based logistics provider who works to dispatch shipments via asset-based carriers. There are people who have assets in terms of ships or trucks and trains and other things. Through them, they are going to send the goods or receive the goods. Freight forwarding positions involve booking and arranging space for shipments on carriers such as vessels, aeroplanes, trucks, and trains. So they are more like logistic managers or logistic service providers. And then we come to the last part, which is the Customs Act. Very important. Without the Customs Act, how are you going to handle the movement of goods towards coming inside the country or going outside the country? So there has to be a Customs Act, just like we have a tax act for income tax and sales tax and for excise and value addition tax, etc. Similarly, we have the Customs Act. As per the Customs Act 1962, the Central Board of Excise and Customs, which is called the board, has been given the powers to appoint customs ports, airports, and ICDs, where the imported goods can be brought in for unloading or loading of export goods. If you didn't know, let me tell you, Patna Airport is an international airport for cargo. It is a national airport for passenger. But for cargo, it is international because it also receives flights directly from Dubai and other places. And the goods are directly the cargo aircrafts. They come from these Middle Eastern countries straight to Patna Airport. So in terms of cargo, it is international airport, and in terms of passenger, it is our national airport. Now, these the custom related issues at the airport will be under the domain of customs. And this all of this falls under the Customs Act. Similarly, powers have been given to the board to notify places as land custom stations for clearance of goods imported or exported by land or by inland water. So again, the board, the Central Board of Exchange and Customs, they will decide where to have this inland container depot, ICD, which is called land custom stations. Since custom duty is an indirect tax imposed under the Customs Act formulated 1962, the Customs Act 1962 is the basic statute which governs entry or exit of different categories of vessels, aircraft, goods, passengers, etc. into or outside the country. Anyone who is going outside the country or coming inside the country, they will be governed by this Customs Act. Airport will be handled by the airport authority, but movement of people will be governed by the Customs Act. So, and the act extends to the whole of India. Anywhere in India, the Customs Act is in power. And Customs Act 1962, just like any other tax law, is primarily for the levy and the collection of duties. But at the same time, it has the other and equally important purposes such as. So, of course, Customs Act regulates the imports and exports. It protects the domestic industry, because if customs is not there, goods and services from outside can come inside the country without any control, and they can play havoc with your domestic markets. So today, the automobile industry and there are so many other industries which are safe because customs is there. If the customs was not there, second-hand cars can come to India, and all these car companies which exist in India, all of them would perish, because the second-hand cars, they come for about 50,000, 1 lakh rupees. These cars are like about 10 years old, brand new, because these have been driven in Europe and America. Good condition, and it will be worth 25 lakhs and will be available for 1 lakh in India. A second-hand, third, fourth, fifth-hand automobiles. It is not allowed today, and it is part of the Customs Act. And because it is not allowed, therefore the automobile industry of India is safe. Otherwise, it would have been long gone. Anyways, it is right now in a very bad situation. And of course, third point, Customs Act, the most important part is prevention of smuggling. Smuggling is when goods move inside, go out from the country or come inside the country without payment of the taxes, without payment of the custom duties and special custom duties and other cess. In Customs Act, their job is conservation and augmentation of foreign exchange and so on. So because it is customs, movement of goods and services, and therefore if the goods and services are moving, therefore along with that there is going to be a corresponding movement of foreign exchange. So therefore conservation and augmentation of foreign exchange also falls under Customs Act. That brings us to the end of this session.